coming to this talk with LROD. I'm Melissa Noble, the Managing Director for the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Center and also instructor for this interdisciplinary arts course. We are so thrilled to be able to provide this talk and support LROD to come here to the University of Houston. She taught a class this morning to the dance program, which was very exciting, and we're so excited for this lecture tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Center, which functions as a support for and resource for students, faculty, and staff. We support interdisciplinary programs and collaborations that include performances, lectures, visiting artists, scholarships and fellowships. And it is with extreme pleasure that I introduce LROD to you. She is recognized as a radical choreographer, filmmaker, mask maker, and new media designer. LROD's mission crosses the borders we carry in co-creative spaces, sharing radical tenderness with each moving body. LROD creates inclusive installations, surreal dance works, and integrates emerging technologies with care. LROD's work focuses the visual, embodied, and emotional way that the border moves through their research. LROD's movement research investigates contemporary lineages of Latin forms in dance, alter egoism, and discovering communal environments of agency. And LROD's films explore Latinidad in the context of border art through the lens of surrealism, Chicano futurism, Latinx futurism, and intergenerational archives. Currently, LROD is the interim head of dance and lecturer in the School of Theater, Dance, and Media at Harvard University. They are artistic director of Harvard Dance Project and core artist for Livable Futures. Please help me welcome LROD.
Yay. Yay. All right, thank you all for being here. I would like to start today with just a movement primer. Yeah, we are talking about dance and choreography, but essentially we're talking about movement. And we all move through our day. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the accessibility of movement. And to do this, yeah, I want to offer us a start to our day, to our conversation. So if we will, we'll just go around the room and we can start start over here. Oh, no. See, movement already. Movement already. We'll start over here. And just offer a movement that you feel compelled to do. You can stay seated, and we will do the movement with you. You want to start today?
Sure.
Great. Ooh. Yes. We'll go all the way up stage here. Nice. Chris. Hey. Oh, nice. We might want to do the other side so we're not unequal in our sides. Good. Yes, upstage. Oh. Yes. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Nice. Ah! Yeah, okay. Kennedy. Nice. Stretching. Oh, I love it. Lovely. Huh. Hey. Lovely. Oh. Yes. Siesta. Sparklers. Nice. Wonderful. Lisette. Nice. And mine to you. Yes, nice. So when we begin to think about movement, right, we all move. We all know how to move. And I think of Naila Randall Bellinger, one of my colleagues, and she said to me, dance is our first epistemology. We move first. We don't come out of the womb speaking. We come out of the womb moving. So we all move. And dance is essentially movement. Yeah, it's just configured differently, but it has a real importance in our community. And it did for a really long time, up until, I would say, maybe the invention of the computer. Maybe that has made us more sedentary. It has made us take a position like this, maybe. More of this, yeah. More of this in our day, less moving. How many of you go to a gym? How many of you run? Some, okay. How many of you do some walking around the neighborhood? Lovely, yeah, so we're moving, yeah, we're moving our bodies. Dance can offer us these same types of explorations that we do when we're at a gym, when we're walking, doing things like this, but they also invite an extra level of insight and critique and conversation, yeah? So I'm gonna start today. There are a lot of different ways in which we can start our conversation, but I'm gonna diverge from myself after I show you this, just because I want to support the conversation of re-engineering dance and choreography. But I wanted to share a little bit about my research. And this is the last film that I made before COVID. So there was that moment of pause. And I just started making work again, and this film has become the place that I am citing from. So as a scholar, I am citing from my own research. I work as a visual artist, so all of the graphics that I use come from my own work. I use the cards that you see that have landscape on it. That is the title of a work. So all of that is what I consider choreography, in the wheelhouse of choreography, along with the dance film, along with the AR, VR work that I do in technology, along with the research that I'm doing. So it's very much a part of the reimagination. So I'll share with you this video. It's not on my website. If you haven't been to my website, you can see a little bit about what I'm talking about. It's www.lrod.space. But yeah, this film was made in El Paso, which is my home. So let's do sound test real quick. Yay. All right. Oh my goodness, don't look at my tabs. Ah! Okay. Do we have thoughts? What are thoughts? What do we think of that?
I had a question. How did you choose the music? You could have chosen everything style, so what was the reasoning in choosing the sounds and the music that you chose?
So I make a lot of the music, and then I chop, screw, mix, reverse, distort.
So what was it saying? Because I was trying to figure out what was
The what?
What was being said? I was trying to figure out what was.
There are a lot of layers to what is
Okay.
being said, yeah. So a lot of intention around the border, a lot of conversations,
Okay.
and just thinking about having those conversations within the realms of radical tenderness, right? So not necessarily contributing to the continued stereotypes of border conversations. Like they're there, I can't ignore them, but there are these other spaces that can be lifted. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? Things you noticed?
I like the way that, where would you position that fence and sort of that near the pulsing of it? Like where what's usually supposed to be something that keeps out felt like a rupture in the video, like a screen in the surface.
Yeah.
And that was really powerful. That sort
Right.
of way of like moving into and out of the screen.
Yeah. We think about the ancestor like Gloria Anzaldúa, and Scholar talks about the rupture, the border being a ruptured space. And that is that moment of oscillation between this tension between the border disappearing and right? There's that moment of like, oh, that's what it looks like without a border, or that's what it is. And I try to navigate those spaces between that utopia and dystopia, and I try not to tread too far one way or the other, with staying very present in that conversation. I think that is what helps keep that relevance, but it is a ruptured space. It is a created space of tension. But in living with that tension, there is so much more than that.
I loved that part too. For me, it was almost like a torn photograph. And then the piecing it together, and then the emergence of the fence back again was like, oh.
Yeah.
We're back there.
Yeah, we're still there. Great. Thank you for sharing. All right, so a little bit of a switch here. Where is my... Oh, that's not right. Not that one. Nope. Where did it go? Am I not seeing it right? Okay. Great. So we're talking about re-engineering dance and choreography. So what I've really been sitting with and thinking about has really come from a lot of intersections in my journey. So I did not go to college until I was 30 years old. So I had a professional career. I did a lot of dancing, a lot of professional gigs. I taught professionally. I've always danced and choreographed. That has been something that has been in my life since before I could even, I don't even have that memory because that's how far it goes back. And what is really interesting about it is I went to college at 30 in dance, right? So here I am, 30 years old in dance, and everyone around me thinks I'm crazy, thinks I'm like, I've lost my mind, right? They're like, why are you doing this? You already are successful. And I was like, I don't have all the answers. I want to know more about what it is that I am doing. I want to know why it is meaningful to dance, to make dance. I just want to have more answers. So I began my journey, went through a professional program, ended up with way more questions, not answers. Didn't have answers, had more questions about process, about making, about what's next. So that led me to grad school. Grad school was a lot of the same things, but I got to do a lot more at the intersections of what I was really interested in. I had more freedom, and that was really important to me. So I was in theater, I was in ACAD, which is the Advanced Center of Computing and Design. That's where a lot of the intermedia and technology flex comes from. And then Latinx studies. So really working at these intersections that I am now currently really fulfilling and thinking about. And COVID hit that moment, blah, 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 unsure. Anyways, fast forward, I'm now in this position where across the United States at least, a lot of dance programs are thinking about how we're shifting, how we're readdressing dance, choreography in our programming, in our interfacing with students, looking at just, what is the current pulse on the field. So a lot of this research has come from that place. So I'm excited. So why re-engineering? And I think about this because when we think about re-engineering, right, we have re-engineering in a business model and we have re-engineering in software. And I like to always think about like other structures so that I can think in conversation in relation to. But we are, whether that be reverse engineering, restructuring, really thinking about a new form or a new outcome. But really it brings us to this area of questioning and lets us, for a moment, daydream a bit. I like this return to daydreaming as an adult. I like this return to reimagining. I like this return to play. Oftentimes in the institution, play, daydreaming, reimagining, those things aren't really on the table for us, right? It's like, no, don't daydream, focus, pay attention. So sometimes daydreaming, sometimes imagining can be really useful as strategies and tools. So I come to this discussion between two dance scholars and choreographers, Liz Lerman and Adishella Akinley, in Dance Architecture and Engineering. This is in sharing on page 313. Liz Lerman is a renowned choreographer, and she says, at my university, we are striving for what I call aesthetic equity. This book was published in 2021, I believe. Not ballet and Western modern dance, making room for a bit more of urban forms, but actually have equity, which means the floors have to change, the context of courses have to change, and the learning outcomes have to accept and support this multiple aesthetics. With every innovation, right, there's a sense of loss. It might be ballet or jazz or even some forms of dance composition or improvisation, but as curriculums evolve, the language you offer in the book can cut across all that codification. You can't have people in the room with all those skills. In fact, it might be a way those people can come together in the understanding of movement, not just trying to fuse forms. And Adishella Kinley responds, yes, rather than a treadmill of one practice replacing another, right? We're getting into that cycle of just like doing the same thing over and over. There is also a place for a language about the connection across dance within different dance forms. So we are not just in debate about hip hop in, ballet out, no time for African diasporic dance because we have to fill a quota for Cunningham classes or the equivalent conversation in architecture or engineering departments. So this conversation is very current, very relevant to the field. It's happening on an almost daily basis. It's something that I'm having conversations with almost on a day-to-day in theater, dance, and media, and we are at the intersection of three departments in one. So that's very interesting. The other question, why dance? Why do you dance if you dance? Does anyone have an answer on why you dance if you dance that you would like to share? Yay, I saw it. Why?
You mean in general?
Yeah, in general.
If I worked in?
Yeah.
Just have fun.
Have fun. Yeah. What else? That was great. Sorry, I saw it. I had to call you. Yeah. Because it feels good. Yeah. What else?
Comfort.
Say?
Comfort.
Comfort. Yeah. What else?
Dance for my joy and the joy of others.
Joy and joy of the others. Yeah.
I think it just depends on the situation, because dance can be considered a language of its own. You can dance seductively, you can dance in, praise and worship, you can dance at a party, so it's kind of like a universal language. If you're dancing, someone's gonna join.
Exactly. It has a very unique position in community. And we look back historically, we find dance is at the center of our communities, yeah, across the globe. Yeah. So why dance? Why dance? Something I think I've asked that question almost every day. Why dance? So coming back to 1978, Joanne Kilionohumoko wrote, "An anthropologist looks at ballet as a form of ethnic dance." She defined dance in 1978 as this, and I still think it has resonance. It still holds something. And it says, dance is a transient mode of expression performed in a given form and style by the human body moving in space. Dance occurs through purposefully selected and controlled rhythmic movements. The resulting phenomenon is recognized as dance both by the performer and the observing members of a given group. So this could be the dance club, this could be the dance studio, this could be the improvisatory, what was that, flash mobs? Yeah, oh, so sorry. FaceTime. Moving on. Ann Cooper Albright, choreographing difference in 1997. Ann Cooper Albright is another dance scholar, dance historian, and she wrote, in a historical moment when the body is considered to be a direct purveyor of identity and is thus the object of so much intellectual and physical scrutiny, a moment when academics and scientists, as well as artists and politicians, are struggling to understand the cultural differences between bodies, dance can provide a critical example of the dialectical relationship between cultures and the bodies that inhabit them. So, dance carries a lot of information. If we think about Brenda Dixon Gottschild in Digging the Africanist Presence, she states that Catherine Dunham was at, I think it was the Savoy or the Palladium in about 1950, and she was watching the Mambo. And when she was watching the Mambo, she was saying, in the Mambo, I can see that the African form of dance has been preserved, and it is a much better form of dance for carrying African histories forward. In the Mambo, that's just the Mambo, right? So what other movement forms have all of these histories to them for us to investigate? That was 1950. Catherine Profeta, recently in 2015, says yet although there is much that could have gleaned from considering the congruency of the object and the activity of thought, this chapter focuses primarily on the object, which is the human body, set loose in motion, in some fashion framed or recognized as dance. So how many of you have heard a song that just like courses through your body and you just like literally have to get up and dance? How many? Almost everyone. How many of you have not had that experience yet? Nobody. Okay, great. Yeah, so music, right, has this power. So if music, how many of you dance with music most of the time? How many of you dance without music most of the time? Oh, interesting. So normally, dance happens with music, right, which makes it already an interdisciplinary form, right? But in cases, dance can be done without music, and music can be done without dancing. Yeah, so they're not paired together, but that's important. This is a very long one. I'll let us take some time to read this one. This is really fascinating by Claire Croft, Dancers at Diplomats. While many important distinctions exist between the Cold War and the 21st century programs, one almost mundane idea animates both eras of dance in diplomacy. All the State Department programs described in this book moved living artists through foreign countries as representatives of the United States. American forays into cultural diplomacy began in the 1930s and 1940s and centered on visual art. 13 of the performing arts programs did not begin in earnest until the 1950s. As embassies no longer hosted only art objects, such as paintings and sculptures, presented without their makers, but instead presented dancers and musicians. The new emphasis on sending people abroad made cultural diplomacy particularly fertile ground for simultaneously functioning as propaganda and dissent. Okay? So now we have dance involved in our diplomacy in the 1950s. How many knew that information? I didn't know that information until I read Claire Croft's book, right? So dance had a really big importance in how we were interfacing across the globe. Why dance? What are our thoughts on dance so far? What are we thinking? Dance has been around for a long time. Dance is important. Dance has been in a lot of different fields. What else? What else has dance been up to?
Someone else had said it earlier too, and you referenced it, the nonverbal communication
Right.
aspect of bringing people together.
Yeah.
It preserves history even if it's tainted in some way.
Right. Preserves history. What else? Anything else? Dance is still fun. Yeah.
For me, dance has fit like so many hats. Like you said, when you're born, you're always like a baby, naturally bouncing. If it's religion, if it's government, and then if it's art, but it also is athletic because you can sit and music, but it also has to
Right.
So since it stresses across certain forms, and then it's like a sixth sense unspoken thing. So I feel like it takes a lot of different compartments, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to interdance, and it's very porous. It's very accessible in a lot of different ways it can be engaged with. Yeah. So lastly, why choreography? Who in the room is a choreographer? Okay, let's ask that one more time. Who in the room is a choreographer? Stand in your power. Raise your hand. Yes, thank you. Awesome. Yes, feel that. So when we are thinking about choreography now, we're thinking, oops, I did not mean to do that. Go back. We are thinking about, where did my mouse go? There we go. Okay. So choreography. When did we start thinking about choreography as a making practice and not just a tool for notation? Does anyone know? Yes?
I mean, as Well, what they tell us is like King Louis and like the ballets there, but
That's the notation,
other
yeah.
people, they tell me it goes like way back, before, obviously from like African culture.
Uh-huh,
So it just depends on who's feeding you what information.
right?
This is probably the wrong answer. I think about
No wrong.
patterns, like when you make a pattern, even if it's like a shape or like a color, you say something or like there's a certain score to it.
Mhm.
That's choreography if you keep repeating it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we use your definition, then we probably have to go way back, right? And we could actually start to maybe think about the animals creating choreography before humans created choreography. If we think about flocking, right? Okay, so choreography. I'm going back to Adishella. I'm in conversation with Adishella right now, so she's very prevalent. For dance, this is also about the reflexivity of noticing the knowledges in the practices of dancing beyond their aesthetics, how we open up our dance practices ourselves, and what frameworks we need to do this meaningfully gives dance the challenge to bring the body to the table across disciplines in which the body has been marginalized as a shell for the mind. Remember that sitting moment? Oh. How the perceived mind and body are in togetherness in dance offers larger lessons in collaboration. Thus, dance as a part of an interdisciplinary landscape challenges us, my goodness, and finds methods for how we think move together in the significance of the 21st century moment. And dancing together engages knowledges that manifest in the ability to all move around to create something together. So choreography in itself is a community, is a partnership, is an alignment of human beings coming together to problem solve, to question, to steady themselves around an idea, right? Whether that be in collaboration or with a central idea. Last but not least, Tommy DeFrance, author of Choreography and Corporeality. His idea of choreography and meshwork. How many of you know meshwork? Okay, so the notion of meshwork rejects the idea that choreography is the expression of some transcendental power. Meshwork may be discerned in the event which crosses multiple lines of lives. As the following discussion will suggest, it is not only the choreographer who lives a line, but multiple lines of lives weave and mesh in which the choreographer participates, bringing about events which have not been expected by anyone involved, not even by the choreographer. The choreographer no longer molds his own work, but rather functions with a relational field. The choreographer is thus no longer transcendent, but immanent within the world of relational becoming. That sounds beautiful. Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, meshwork, right? So this idea of horizontal process, human experience process, this idea of coming into a co-creative space, right? No longer working in a hierarchical method, but really thinking about how we are aligning ourselves in a process that provides us all with an engagement around our questions, that provides us with outcomes that maybe I wasn't expecting, right? Even if I'm coming in to organize the event, facilitate or mediate, right? I'm also going to be ready to experience something. What are thoughts about choreography? How many of you have engaged in meshwork? Sometimes in high schools, you might have collaborative, some collaborative events or collaborative making.
I danced for Liz for a while.
Oh yeah, Liz. Ah,
Wow.
that's great. Yeah. Great. Well, thoughts?
I'm curious
Sure.
about the language of the world of relational becoming. I mean, I don't know when this was written.
Mhm.
Is there any relation to relational aesthetics and Bourdieu? Are you familiar with relational aesthetics?
I'm not familiar with that one.
So Bourdieu wrote this,
Uh-huh.
many things. He's a philosopher,
Yep.
French philosopher, but the whole idea of relational aesthetics, that art is now,
Oh,
everything is
yes,
relational.
okay.
It is not
Yep.
objects anymore. I mean, it sort of comes out of conceptual art, but also relates to this because of
Yeah.
course dance is relational. But it's just about the relation of art to bodies,
Yeah,
and specifically the participants as well as the audience,
yeah.
or what we call the audience.
I think that's really relevant. I think this relational concept and idea is probably more in the direction of where we're going if we think more about the activation and participation of the events that are being held. If we think about how we participate in not only dance but other art forms, even music and concerts and TV and Netflix and just all the activity that's happening in the ways that we're like submerging and deepening. I think that is very important to think about because it brings forward the human being, how important it is in the work that we are assigning ourselves to or letting ourselves be a part of versus just before as it being like, this is a transaction, I'm getting paid, because we can see that. We can see when dancers are in that transactional state sometimes, and it is just a job. And there is
Any
no,
other artist,
right, and there is no relation to the work.
Artists who
Right.
sell their objects. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a really interesting way to think about art in
Yeah.
general, this relational.
And that might be the push more for the rise of the process. This need and this desire and this advocacy for process. A lot of residencies now will just hold space for process rather than just like come in and make something. It's like, no, come in and work with your group and work on whatever it is that feels meaningful to you. Or develop, if you need time to develop more in your process or research something else, have access to people that can help you do that. So awesome. Well, that's what I have for today. I'd like to open up the last little part of our time together for some conversation. Let me just get some water.
Well, you asked these questions of why dance, why choreography, and I think there's that interesting question of what is dance?
What is dance? I think this is where I'm going to come join you all. I feel weird over there. Hi. You want to come over? I feel great. You don't have to. Oh, my computer is translating all of my words or just talking. It's doing its CC-ness here. I think this is the question of what we're really thinking about when we're thinking about dance in the institution and its relevance, its relationality. Why is it dance research? Is it movement practice? Is it movement research? Is it dance and? Is it the intersection? Is it intermedia? Is it choreographic research, scholarship, dance studies, performance? Is it all of the above? Is it graduate studies? Like, what is this container that we're in? Not just to get you trained to perform or be with companies, but if I think about all of the schools across the nation every year and the cohorts of dancers that are exiting, I'm not sure the field has enough of those jobs for dance companies, right? Our dance company jobs are very limited. So is it entrepreneurship? Are you working as a choreographer? Are you working in theater spaces? Are you going to work with your friends and make your own company? Are you going to cohabitate? Like, I know a couple friends that are doing that. They have 2 companies and then they support each other. So they do split bills constantly. So I think that there's something interesting there about what are we looking at and what are our movement practices? What is the program and function of dance and choreography? And how are we relating to other fields? How are we being in conversation with them? Because I think dance and choreography has a lot to offer to any other field, just as it offers us a lot of information. So I think that that's something that we can continue to just chew on right now. I don't have answers yet. Still very much a day-to-day. But it is very exciting to think about and be a part of. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
So dance is obviously a social thing, and all the other art forms, like musicians have their sheets, and artists have their paintings, and theater has their scripts, but dance doesn't have a lot of tangible things to look at historically. Like, people didn't really take the time to sit down and write. We're just now getting things on film. So as like people who are movers, but we're like in academia, trying to get a degree, like everything's very up in the air. What would you say is like our responsibility as people who have the luxury to go to school for something that there's not really a lot to really look back on?
One of the most important things about this generation and moving forward generations coming is you have so much access to technology. So your ability to document your process, whether it be in a public space or a private space, is like, that just wasn't available. It just wasn't something that was possible. So if it is a process, like put your phone out, record your process, do writing around it. If you make something, articulate what that piece is about and write about it. Yeah, start to think about how you can start developing a trail of your work now versus waiting till you get into grad school to start doing that. Because you'll never do it. You will never do it. Bibi Miller has a wonderful free book. It's based off her work, Rhythm O. I got to see the premiere of that work. It is online, and it is a great example of what someone can be doing. Bibi is B-E-B-E, Miller. And you can just look up Rhythm, I think Rhythm O. It's called How Dance is Built, The Making of a Rhythm. And it's an ebook. Bibi Miller Dance Company.
Where's your collection camera? Your LROD's collection.
Oh. Thank you, computer technology. Yeah, so it's a wonderful book, and it's a digital archive, and really dives into a lot of different ideas around how to document. Her book is free. Yours does not have to be, but we can also talk about access, right? Do we want our information to be more accessible? That's a question that you can sit with. That's a great question. But yes, document, write, start thinking about what it is that you do. One of the most important parts of being an artist is being able to talk about your work in a way that is like people can just come to it very easily. And sometimes grad school can get us really far away from that. So always try to find this medium place. in-between place. It's not to say that one or the other is bad, but just know how to like wield the words. Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment about the documentation thing because that ephemerality, right, hasn't,
Mm-hmm.
of course, it's been difficult to document, but in dance it's been kinesthetic, right? That's how dances have been taught and taught. So it's been like a kinesthetic documentation.
Yep.
An older dancer teaches a younger dancer a dance from a company or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or even in social dance. And
Visual,
so
yep.
I think that's an interesting idea too, that we have kinesthetic documentation
Mm-hmm.
of learning the body itself.
Yep. It's very important. So we start to think also about accessibility of dance, right? So how many of you go to a dance studio? How many of you have never been to a dance studio? Okay. How many of you have been maybe once or twice to a dance studio? Okay. So sometimes we start thinking about dance, right? Or we start saying like movement or dance clubs are going out, but then we say, oh, like come to the dance studio or come to a dance class. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, I don't dance. I don't go there. They're gonna make me wear leotard and tights or face a mirror. Someone's gonna yell at me. Like all of a sudden all these like stories and narratives emerge around dance. And it's like, whoa, where did all these stories and narratives come from, right? Whether it be experience, whether it be just something. So we begin to think about who comes into this space and what does that space offer you, right? So a little bit of reimagining about who's invited to the dance room. So a lot of what I've been working on is, doing away with some audition processes or levels of entry, and really also thinking about experience or learning and growth for those that are in it, whether that be students who have had years and years of training, because if you've had years and years of training, you still have a lot to learn, or maybe even cross disciplines, right, to learn. And if you're new to dance, there's a whole like learning around just orientating to the culture, the, how the operations of the room are. So a lot of the strategies that I do, of course, are like what we experience today. We work more in a circle. We don't really notice the mirror. We don't really, in the rooms we have, we get to cover the mirror, which is great. Goodbye, mirror. Now it's just a regular room, like if we were in a club. Some rooms have lighting, so I can like make it look like a club or somewhere fun like that. Try to put music on right away. Try to think about offerings of movement. Try not to invoke this idea of mimicry, right? You don't have to look like me. This is really an experience, right? If I'm just moving my shoulder in a figure eight, you could move your shoulder in a figure eight, right? So like thinking of just this idea rather than I'm telling you on the count of 5, you're gonna move your shoulder up and down and do it just like my body, right? So that there's this softening of practice and more of a welcoming into the process rather than everything being more rigid. Yeah, so, and also cultivating more investigation, independent investigation and research, which is really important for you all who are thinking about choreography. Because where does choreography come from? Is there a handbook that says after you do lunge on right foot, you will kick ball change? No. Where does choreography come from? What? But to make choreography, you do what? Move and improvise, right? Make up sometimes experiment, ask a question. What's your favorite memory? Do you remember when you first fell in love? Make a dance. Yeah, like, what was your first heartbreak? Yeah, so there's lots of different ways that we can think about making dance, right, or choreography, but yeah, and there's a whole lineage of that. I think Tommy talks about it in Meshwork, so if you haven't read that article, great article to read, or chapter. So, any other thoughts, questions?
I really enjoyed our conversation today, and in particular about where dance is going in the future. And we talked about technology and how important that is to integrate. Can you speak a little bit more about your thoughts? I know you said you don't have the answers, but it is really, it's interesting for me to think about the company structure is not as prevalent as it once was, and we see that diminishing.
Yeah, technology is so important. I work a lot with a software called Isadora. It's a program, and it's specifically made for dancers, movers, artists, and it's basically like a portal into another realm, like stage, and you can do all of your mapping, you can do 3D, not modeling, you usually import your models, but you can do spatial design with your projectors. So if you're thinking of having multiple projectors in a space, it actually eliminates that need. You just probably need a powerful computer. Usually your Macs won't really support it. But there are other ways to get around it. You can actually do a lot of green screen work before and then implement your videos, so there's some cheating. But you can actually do, you can layer in all of your videos, you can mesh them, crop them, have them fold in and out. This is also where a lot of interactivity, so if you've seen Chunky Move, have you all watched that work? We'll just show a quick demonstration. This was glow. So this was infrared technology. This is, I think, 2009. But this is interactive. So interactive technologies, aligning, mapping, trying to think. Yeah, you have seen this? Great. Yeah, so this is interactive and mapped. So this actually takes us into a whole conversation about, I mean, there's lots of conversations here, but what is our digital self? What is our digital double? What does the media body mean when we apply movement and media together? There's something that happens to the body that is no longer like, I cannot relate to that as a human being anymore. So it's other bodied in the sense that I'm not able to really like, it takes on different shapes and forms and compositions and textures. I'll just fast forward a bit. So Isadora, you can connect to many different things, but you can also use a Connect. And a Connect would basically take even your cameras here. So if I had my Isadora open, I could use my camera to detect my eyes and have things move based on my eyes, or I could have it react to sounds or my own like claps and things would happen. I can program it to the skeletal structure of my foot, and then every time my left foot moves, and let's say I'm dancing and I have a top-down projector, then as I'm dancing in the light, maybe words appear, right? So there's this interactive component to dance and technology that's very exciting to think about as a world, not only just as like static projection, but more of a relationship to media. Yeah, great question. I know we're past time. Is that right? Do we have one more question? Okay, yeah.
I'm just curious. I just wanted to know what your training entails. Like, are you a studio conventionally? Did you have a mentor? Was it like very community or just like repeating the song?
I have a large breadth of training. So I started out in ballet, tap, jazz, blah, blah, blah. I had also grown up in social dance, so like not necessarily pro sport, but like mi familia, always dance salsa, cumbia, quinceañeras. So that is really relevant in a lot of the organization of the room and more of the communal sense of dance and that kinesthetic relationship to dance and that visual learning. Then a lot of different professional companies along the way, trainings. Then I went to school. I still work with Sidra Bell. I've worked with Kyle Abraham. I've worked with La Pocha Nostra, Guillermo Gomez Peña. I've had a pretty large range of movement styles and experiences, whether that be rep, company work, radical performance art. I have been able to do a lot, and then also as a producer myself, help hold space for other artists. So I think in the range of languages, I have trained in many. As I got older, I started to train more in Latin, more in African, more in also a departure in my own this was more when I was in my late 30s. Now I'm giving my age away. That's okay. But yeah, I'm old. Thanks. But I was thinking about want to pull away a little bit as I got older from taking so much dance and actually go into a more investigative practice of my own, to ask a lot of those questions about what am I doing now with all of these languages in my body, and where do I want to focus my energy and time, and what feels relevant and necessary. Great question. Yeah. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. Thank you for taking time to have a conversation with me and to listen and share and think about dance and its re-engineering possibilities. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening and do some dancing.